The sons of Vayara hung heavy in the sky. Their golden light spilled across the crowded marketplace where voices rose and fell like crashing waves. Merchants shouted prices. Alien traders waved bright cloths and glittering tools. Guards leaned against tall stone pillars, their spears flashing in the heat. To most, the market was alive, full of sound and smell. But to three women standing in the dust, it felt like a battlefield they could never win. The women were widows. Each had lost her husband to war, disease, or hunger. Their clothes were torn, their shoes worn thin, and their faces carried the shadow of long nights without rest. They had children waiting at home, hungry mouths crying for food, and yet every door in the city had been shut against them. One of the women, tall with silver markings on her cheek, stepped forward. Her voice trembled. "Please, we only ask for work. We can wash, we can carry, we can clean." She bowed her head low, hoping someone would show mercy. But the first stall owner waved his claw and hissed, "Widows bring only misfortune, leave before you stain my shop." Another merchant laughed. "Without a husband you are worth nothing. Go beg elsewhere." The second widow, smaller and thinner, pressed her hands together. Her eyes shone with tears. "We have children, please. They have not eaten since yesterday." But the guards only smirked and turned their faces away. The merchants shook their heads. Some even whispered cruel jokes. The market that overflowed with life and wealth had no space for three women who carried grief and desperation on their shoulders. The third widow, the youngest of them, clutched her shawl tightly. Her lips shook, but she forced the words out. "We will take any job, even the dirtiest. We do not ask for much, just food." The laughter of the crowd struck her like stones. Their words were colder than the desert wind. Even those who pitied them dared not step closer, for in that world kindness was seen as weakness. Then, through the noise, another figure walked into the square. He was human. His name was Daniel. He wore simple worker's clothes, his boots dusty from travel. He had come to the market to buy tools, nothing more. But his eyes caught the three women at once. He stopped. His chest grew tight. He knew that look. Back on Earth after disasters, he had seen mothers with hollow eyes and empty hands. He had seen people beg for food and be pushed away. The memory struck him like lightning. He turned to a merchant nearby and asked, "Why does no one help them?" The merchant snorted. "They are widows. They have no husbands, no power, no worth. Hire them and you will only gain shame." Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked back at the women. He could have walked away. He was only a traveler, one man in a cruel galaxy. But something inside him refused to let go. He could not be blind to suffering, not when it stood right in front of him. The widows noticed his gaze. Their voices grew weaker, almost broken. "Please, sir, we can work. We will do anything." The crowd laughed again. Someone called out, "Do not waste your time, human. They are cursed." But Daniel stepped forward. His boots sank into the dust. His voice was calm but strong. "I will hire you." The laughter stopped. Silence fell across the market. Even the guards looked up. The widows froze, their eyes wide. "You will hire us?" one whispered. Her voice shook as if she feared the words would disappear. Daniel nodded. "Yes. Not as beggars, not as slaves, but as workers. I have need of help, and you have need of food. That is enough." The market erupted in murmurs. Some scoffed. Some shook their heads, a few spat on the ground in disgust, but Daniel ignored them all. He stretched out his hand, his eyes steady. "Come with me. We start today." For a moment no one moved. The widows stared at him, afraid it was a dream. But slowly, the tall widow stepped forward. Her trembling hand touched his. Then the second followed, her eyes shining with tears. Finally, the youngest reached out, her grip firm despite her shaking body. The market watched, some with anger, some with disbelief. But in that simple act, something shifted. Three women who had been invisible were seen again. Their dignity returned with the promise of work, and the human who dared to stand beside them had done more than just hire workers. He had broken a While the galaxy had built around them, it was only the beginning. But in that crowded square under the burning suns, a spark was lit. A spark that would spread far beyond the marketplace. A spark that would soon shake the city, and maybe even the stars themselves. The market slowly returned to its noise, but whispers still followed Daniel as he walked away with the three widows. Some aliens pointed at him, some shook their heads, others laughed behind his back, calling him a fool. But Daniel did not care. The women walked behind him with cautious steps, as if every moment might be their last chance. They had begged for weeks and been ignored. Now a stranger, a human, had spoken words that no one else dared to say. Their hands still trembled. Their hearts still pounded. It felt unreal. Finally, Daniel stopped near the edge of the market, where the shade of a broken wall gave them space away from curious eyes. He turned and faced them. His voice was calm, but carried weight. "I meant what I said. I will hire you. But first, I need to know your names." The tallest woman bowed slightly. Her silver markings glimmered faintly in the sun. "I am Solara," she said. Her voice carried strength even through hunger. She had once been proud, once the wife of a soldier, but now she fought only to keep her children alive. The second widow, thin and fragile, clutched her shawl. "My name is Arian," she whispered. Her eyes darted as if afraid someone might strike her down for speaking. The youngest widow lowered her gaze, her hands pressed together tightly. "I am Lyra," she said softly. Her voice was like a fading flame, but Daniel could feel the weight of her courage. Daniel nodded. "Solara, Arian, Lyra," he repeated, as if sealing a promise. "I cannot give you riches. I do not own land or ships, but I can give you work, fair pay, and food for your children." The three women looked at each other. Their lips trembled. Their eyes burned with tears they had long hidden. "No one has spoken to us like this," Solara whispered. "Not since our husbands were taken from us." Daniel's face hardened. "That is their loss, not yours." Arian's voice shook. "But why would you do this? You do not even know." "Us." Daniel took a slow breath, his gaze distant for a moment. "Because I have seen this before. On Earth. I watched people suffer while others turned away. I promised myself I would never walk past someone in need if I could help. That is reason enough." The women were silent, their throats tight, their hearts aching with the weight of unexpected kindness. They had been rejected so often that even a simple offer felt like a miracle. But kindness in Vayara was dangerous, and they all knew it. Already whispers would spread. Already, people would question the human's choice. Daniel continued. "I have a workshop near the old docks. It is not much, but I need help. Supplies must be cleaned, tools repaired, orders carried. It will not be easy, but it is honest work, and in return you will be paid." Lyra's lips parted. She looked at him with wide eyes. "Paid? In coin?" "Yes," Daniel said firmly. "Coin for food, coin for your homes, and no one will dare call you beggars again." The women gasped softly. Their hands shook. They had almost forgotten what dignity felt like. To earn their own bread, to be seen not as broken but as workers, it was more than they had dreamed. But Solara's brow furrowed. She glanced at the market where eyes still lingered. "They will hate you for this. They will say you are cursed for taking us in." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then let them hate me. I would rather carry their scorn than see children starve." Silence hung between them. The widows stared at him as if trying to see if his words were real, but his eyes did not waver. His voice did not shake, and slowly, hope began to stir inside them. For the first time in weeks, their backs straightened. Solara's voice grew stronger. "We will work. We will not waste this chance." Arian nodded quickly, her thin frame trembling but her spirit rising. "We will prove ourselves." Lyra lifted her chin, her soft voice steady now. "We will not fail you." Daniel allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Then it begins today." He turned toward the road leading out of the marketplace. The three women followed step by step. Their shadows stretched across the dust, not as outcasts, but as workers walking toward a new beginning. But in the marketplace they left behind, rumors grew, whispers turned to murmurs, murmurs turned to plans. There were those who did not want widows to rise again, those who feared what it meant for a human to give them dignity. As Daniel and the widows walked toward the docks, eyes followed them, some full of curiosity, others of anger, and in the distance a figure slipped into the crowd, disappearing into the alleys with a cruel smile. The widows had found a chance at life, but danger was already on their trail. The old docks of Vayara stretched wide along the murky river. Once it had been a place of trade and life. Now many of the warehouses were broken, their doors hanging loose, their windows cracked. Yet in one corner smoke curled gently from a chimney. That was Daniel's workshop. He pushed the heavy door open. The widows stepped inside and gasped. It was not a palace, not even a fine home, but it was real. Wooden benches lined with scattered tools, shelves stacked with half-repaired machines and a small fire crackling in a stove. The air smelled of iron and oil. "This is where I work," Daniel said, his voice calm. "And this is where you will work with me." Solara's eyes widened. "You trust us to be here?" Daniel nodded. "Trust is given, not earned. If you take care of this place, it will take care of you." Arian touched the nearest bench, her thin fingers tracing the worn wood. "It is more than we dreamed of," she whispered. Lyra's gaze, fixed on the fire, her lips parted slightly as if to feel its warmth. "It feels safe," she said softly. For the first time in months, the women's shoulders eased. Daniel handed them cloths, brushes, and small tools. "Clean the benches, check the crates, and sort the supplies. I will show you how to mend broken pieces." Bit by bit, they nodded quickly, eager. Their hands moved with surprising skill. Solara's strength lifted crates with ease. Arian's delicate touch polished and sorted small parts. Lyra, though quiet, showed sharp eyes, spotting details even Daniel missed. Hours passed. The sound of sweeping, scrubbing, and careful repairs filled the workshop. When Daniel brought out bread and broth, the women ate slowly, almost reverently. Every bite was precious, but outside the city was not silent. Word had spread from the marketplace. Whispers of the human who had hired the widows reached taverns, guard posts, and even the council chambers. Some laughed, calling him a fool. Others warned that such acts would bring unrest. In the shadow of the alleys near the docks, a group of rough-looking aliens gathered. Their leader, a thick-scaled man named Brakar, spat into the dirt. "A human dares to challenge tradition," he growled. "He lifts up widows, women cursed by loss. If this spreads, the balance will break," one of his followers sneered. "We should remind him of his place and remind them of theirs." Brakar's lips curled. "Yes, but not yet. Let him grow comfortable. Let them believe they are safe. Then we strike." Back, in the workshop, Daniel noticed the widows working harder than needed. Their movements carried desperation. He set down his tools and spoke firmly. "You do not have to prove yourselves to me every second. Take breath. You are safe here." Solara looked at him, her eyes burning. "You do not understand. If we fail, if we are cast out again, there will be nothing left for our children." Daniel's heart tightened. He had no family here, no children waiting for him, but he understood the weight of their words. "Then, we will not fail, not together," he said. Arian's lips trembled. "You say together, but we are only burdens." Daniel shook his head. "You are workers. You are people. You are worth more than they say. Do not forget that." The words struck them deeply. Lyra pressed her hand to her mouth to hold back tears. For so long, no one had spoken to them as equals. Night came. The docks grew quiet. Lanterns lit the workshop, casting long shadows on the walls. The widows rested by the fire, their children sleeping nearby. Daniel sat at his bench, repairing a broken engine part. His mind wandered. He knew, eyes were on them, he could feel it, but he also knew he could not turn back. Solara watched him work. "Why do you fight for us?" when even our own people will not. Daniel looked up slowly, his voice low but steady. Because humanity learned long ago what happens when we abandon one another. We are stronger when we rise together. That is how we survive. The widows listened in silence. The fire crackled. Outside, footsteps echoed in the dark alleys. Unseen eyes watching the light of the workshop. In that quiet night, the widows felt the first fragile spark of hope. But far beyond the docks, plans were already forming. Plans to crush that hope. Before it could spread, the moon of Vayara rose over the river, its pale glow stretching across the broken docks. The water reflected the silver light, and the air carried a sharp chill. Inside the workshop, the widows and their children slept close to the fire. Daniel sat near the doorway, his back straight, his eyes restless. He could not sleep. Not because of the noise of the city, but because of the silence. A silence too heavy, too watchful. He felt it pressing against the walls. He stood and walked quietly to the window. From the shadows across the street, he thought he saw a figure move, but when he looked harder, it was gone. Only the darkness stared back. Daniel clenched his jaw. He had seen this before, on worlds where he worked. Whenever someone stood against old traditions, trouble followed. And now, because of his choice, danger was near. The next morning, the widows began their work as usual. Solara lifted crates with practiced strength, Arian polished tools with gentle care, and Lyra sorted parts with sharp eyes. Their children laughed faintly as they played. Near the corner, the workshop felt alive. But Daniel's eyes stayed on the windows. His ears sharp to every sound outside. By midday, whispers reached them. A neighbor came to the door, a nervous old alien with wrinkled skin. He looked at Daniel with worry. "The council is speaking of you," he whispered. "They say you shame the city by lifting widows. They say you break the order." Solara froze, her hands trembling. Arian's face turned pale. Lyra held her breath. Daniel stepped closer, his voice calm but steady. "Thank you for telling me, but I will not stop." The old alien shook his head, fear in his eyes. "You do not understand. They will not just speak, they will act." Then he hurried away. When the door closed, silence filled the workshop. The widows looked at Daniel, fear shining in their eyes. "We should leave," Arian whispered. "If they punish you, it will be because of us." Daniel shook his head. "No. It will be because they fear change. You will not run again. You will stand." Solara's voice hardened. "But what if they come for our children?" Daniel met her gaze, his voice sharp with fire. "Then they will face me first." The widows exchanged looks, fear battling with something new, something stronger. For the first time, they felt they were not alone. That night, the docks were quiet, but danger moved in silence. Brakar and his men slipped through the alleys, their scaled bodies blending with the shadows. They carried clubs and knives, their eyes gleaming with cruel purpose. Inside, Daniel dozed lightly near the door. His ears twitched at a faint creak outside. His hand instinctively reached for the iron bar he kept near his bench. A heartbeat later, the door shuddered under a heavy push. The widows woke, gasping. Solara pulled the children close. Arian whispered prayers. Lyra's hands shook as she grabbed a burning log from the fire. The door burst open. Brakar stepped inside, his teeth bared in a grin. "The human who thinks he is better than tradition," he sneered. His men spilled into the workshop, their shadows filling the room. Daniel stood, iron bar in hand, his voice steady. "Leave now. There is no work for you here." Brakar laughed. "We did not come for work, we came for warning. Take back your offer. Cast these widows out or you will bleed." The widows trembled, but Daniel did not move. His stance firm, his eyes like stone. "No, they stay." Brakar's grin faded into a snarl. "Then you are a fool who will die with them." The first attacker lunged. Daniel swung the iron bar with practiced strength. The clash rang out, a brutal crack. The attacker fell, clutching his arm. Another rushed forward, but Lyra, her fear burning into courage, swung the burning log and struck his shoulder. Flames bit into cloth and he screamed. Solara shoved a crate to block the children. Arian hurled tools from the bench. Daniel fought, like a man who had seen war. His movements quick, precise, he was only one human. But his resolve struck harder than steel. Brakar growled, his blade flashing. He charged at Daniel. Their weapons clashed, sparks flying. The widows cried out, fear choking them. Daniel's arms ached, but his eyes never faltered. He pushed back with every ounce of strength. At last, Brakar staggered. Daniel's bar pressed against his chest. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Brakar's men looked uncertain. Some already limped back toward the door. Daniel's voice thundered. Tell the council, tell the city, the widows stand, and I stand with them. Brakar spat blood, his eyes burning with rage. This is not over, human, he hissed. Then he turned and fled into the night, his men dragging each other away. The workshop was left in silence. The widows clung to their children, their breaths fast. Daniel dropped the iron bar, his hands shaking only now that the fight was done. Solara stepped forward, her voice hoarse. You risked your life for us. Daniel met her eyes, sweat dripping down his face. I did what was right, Lyra whispered, tears running down her cheeks. They will come again. Daniel nodded. Then we will be ready. The widows looked at him, and for the first time their fear bent into something stronger, hope mixed with defiance. In the firelight of that night, they were no longer just widows, no longer just broken souls. They were a family forming around one human's courage, and though danger still hunted them, they would not run again. The attack at the workshop spread through the docks like wildfire. By dawn, every tavern and alley buzzed with the story. A human had defied tradition, had raised widows from the dust, and had fought Brakar's men to stand by them. To some, it was madness. To others, it was hope. Daniel sat at his bench, bruises on his arms, blood dried on his shirt. The widows tended to him in silence. Solara washed the cuts. Arian wrapped his hand. Lyra stirred the fire to keep the children warm. Each movement carried quiet gratitude. You should have let us go, Arian whispered, her voice breaking. Now they will bring more than knives. They will bring the council. Daniel shook his head, his voice firm. If you had left, they would have hunted you anyway. At least here you have a place to stand. The widows exchanged worried glances. They had known cruelty, but never open defiance like this. Solara's eyes hardened. If the council comes, they will not only punish you, they will punish us all. Outside, heavy footsteps echoed. A crowd was gathering. Daniel rose to his feet, pain burning through his ribs. He stepped to the door and opened it. On the street, armored guards stood in a line. Behind them came 3 counselors draped in robes of black and gold. Their faces were sharp, their eyes cold. The crowd of onlookers kept their distance, whispering. The eldest counselor stepped forward, his voice booming. Human, you shame this city. You break our laws by lifting the cursed. You fight against the order of Vayara. Daniel's voice carried steady across the square. I gave honest work to honest people. Is that a crime? The counselor's eyes narrowed. They are widows marked by misfortune. Their hands bring ruin, their children will spread weakness. To raise them is to spit on our traditions. Solara stepped beside Daniel, her shoulders tense. We are not curses. We are mothers, we are workers. Our children are not weakness, they are life. Gasps ran through the crowd. A widow had spoken openly to the council. The counselor sneered. Silence, you should crawl, not speak. Daniel's voice thundered back. She has the right to speak. She has the right to live with dignity. All of them do. The second counselor, younger but cruel, hissed. Then you leave us no choice. If you will not cast them out, you will be cast out yourself. Daniel clenched his fists. Do what you must, but I will not betray them. The counselor raised his hand and the guards stepped forward. The widows gasped. The children cried out. But before the guards reached the door, a sound rose from the crowd. It was a single voice at first, then another, then many, a murmur that grew into defiance. Let them be, someone shouted. The human speaks truth, another called. Soon more voices joined. We are tired of laws that starve the weak. Widows deserve life. Children deserve food. The counselors froze, their eyes scanned the crowd. For the first time in years, the people were speaking against them. Breaker pushed through the crowd, his arm still bandaged from the fight. His voice roared, "This human brings rebellion. If you do not crush him now, you will lose this city." The eldest counselor's face twisted with anger. He turned back to Daniel. "You are a stranger here, and yet you plant seeds of unrest. If you do not leave by dawn, we will burn this workshop and scatter those you protect." The guards slammed their spears to the ground. The threat echoed through the square. The crowd fell into silence. Fear returned. Many lowered their heads. The widows trembled. But Daniel stood firm, his voice steady as steel. "If you burn this place, then you burn the only light left in your city. Do what you will, but know this. Humans do not run from bullies." The counselor's eyes flared. He turned sharply. "By dawn," he spat. Then the guards marched away, the counselors following. Brecar sneered at Daniel before limping after them. When the street emptied, the widows sagged against the doorway. Lyra whispered, "We should run, they will kill us all." Daniel shook his head, his jaw tight. "If you run, they will hunt you forever, but if you stand, others will stand too." Solara's voice was heavy. "You speak as if you know war." Daniel's eyes darkened. "I do. I have seen it. And I know this. Fear feeds tyrants. Courage starves them." The widows fell silent. His words carried weight. His eyes carried truth. That night the workshop was not quiet. People came one by one, slipping through shadows to knock at the door. An old merchant brought bread. A dock worker brought rope. A mother brought cloth. Each whispered the same words, "Do not give up. We are with you." By midnight, the small fire inside the workshop burned bright, not only with wood, but with the spirit of a city that had long been silent. The widows looked around in awe. For the first time, they were not begging alone. For the first time, they were part of something larger. Daniel sat by the fire, his bruised hands wrapped in cloth. He looked at Solara, Arian, and Lyra, his voice low but unshakable. "This fight is no longer just yours, it belongs to all who are tired of being forgotten." And as the flames flickered in their eyes, the widows understood. What began as a plea for work had become a spark of rebellion, a spark that the council would do anything to crush. Dawn came heavy with smoke. The marketplace was not yet awake, but soldiers marched through the streets carrying torches. Their boots struck the stone in rhythm, a sound that echoed like a drum of war. The people of Vayara peered through cracks in their doors, their eyes wide with fear. At the docks, Daniel had not slept. His bruises throbbed, but his spirit was unbroken. The widows sat close to their children, their faces pale with dread. Solara gripped a wooden pole like a spear. Arian held her youngest against her chest, and Lyra clutched a hammer. In her shaking hands, they were ready to defend, even if it cost them their lives. Outside, voices rose. The guards shouted, "By order of the council, this place is condemned." The soldiers spread out, torches in hand, ready to set fire to the workshop. Daniel stepped outside, the widows behind him. The crowd had gathered, again, silent but watching. The same faces that once mocked the widows now stood in tense quiet. Some whispered, some cried, all waiting to see what would happen. The eldest counselor appeared, his robe dragging in the dust. His voice boomed. "Human, you were warned. You defy our laws, you shame our city. Step aside or burn with them." Daniel's voice rang clear. "I will not step aside. They are workers, mothers, and people with worth. If you burn this place, you burn your own people's future." The counselor raised his hand. "Light it," he ordered. A soldier stepped forward, torch in hand. But before he could strike, a voice cried from the crowd, "No." All heads turned. It was the old merchant who had once brought bread. His hands trembled, but his voice grew louder. "We will not watch this," another voice joined. "He speaks truth, we are tired of fear." Soon more voices echoed, "Let them live, let them work. Widows are not curses." The sound grew, a wave of defiance crashing against the silence. The soldiers hesitated, their torches wavering. The counselor shouted, "Silence or face punishment." But the people did not stop. Their voices grew louder, filling the square. Daniel's chest rose with hope. For the first time he saw a city finding its voice. He stepped forward, his arms spread. This is not rebellion, this is life. Look at them. They are tired of cruelty. Give them work, give them dignity, and they will give you a city worth living in. The people cheered. The guards looked uncertain. Some lowered their torches. The counselor's face twisted with rage. Seize him, he screamed. Seize the human. Brakar pushed through the soldiers, his teeth bared, his arm still bandaged, but his eyes hungry for revenge. Let me finish what I started, he growled. His men stepped forward, weapons drawn. Solara stood in front of the widow's children, her voice fierce. You will not touch them. Arian, trembling, raised a broken piece of wood like a blade. You will not pass. Lyra gripped her hammer tight, her small frame shaking, but her eyes burning with fire. We will fight. The crowd gasped. To see widows stand with weapons in their hands was a sight none had dared to imagine. Daniel stepped forward, iron bar in hand, his voice carried like thunder. If you want them, you go through me first. Breaker roared and lunged. His blade clashed against Daniel's bar. Sparks flew. The fight exploded. Soldiers rushed forward. But so did the people. Dock workers grabbed poles. Merchants swung ropes. Mothers hurled stones. The quiet city became a storm. The square filled with chaos, soldiers shouted, but their formation broke under the weight of the crowd. Brakar's men swung wildly, but for every strike, 10 hands fought back. Daniel's arms burned, his body ached, but he did not stop. He struck, blocked, and pushed forward. Solara slammed her pole into a soldier's chest. Arian struck another with surprising strength, and Lyra's hammer cracked against the ground, forcing attackers to stumble back. The widows were no longer victims, they were fighters. Their cries rose above the clash, for our children, for our lives. The counselor's face went pale. He had not expected the people to rise. He shouted for retreat. But his words were swallowed by the roar of the crowd. Soldiers dropped torches and ran. Brakar, bloodied and beaten, snarled before retreating into the alleys. At last, the square grew still. Smoke hung in the air, but the workshop still stood. The people panted, their eyes burning with fire. For the first time in years, they had pushed back. Daniel stood in the center, his iron bar heavy in his hand, bruised and battered, but unbroken. The widows stood beside him, their clothes torn, their arms shaking, but their hearts blazing. Solara lifted her chin, her voice strong. We will not bow again. The crowd echoed her words. We will not bow. Arian held her child tight, tears streaming. We will live. The people cried back. We will live. Lyra raised her, hammer high, her voice fierce though trembling. We are not curses. And the city roared in answer. We are not curses. The counselors fled. Their power cracked. The workshop stood not just as a place of work, but as a symbol that one human's choice had lit a fire across Vayara, a fire that no threat could easily extinguish. The night after the battle was restless. Smoke still clung to the streets, and the sound of broken wood and shattered metal echoed faintly from the docks. The widows sat by the fire, their children curled in their arms. Their faces were streaked with sweat and dust, but their eyes carried something new. Not just fear, but pride. Daniel leaned against the wall, his iron bar. Resting beside him, his arms ached, his ribs burned with bruises, but he stayed awake, watching the quiet city. He knew the fight was not over. The council had been pushed back, but men like Brakar did not give up so easily. Before dawn, footsteps approached. The widows tensed. Solara rose with her pole in hand. Lyra clutched her hammer. Arian pulled the children close, but instead of soldiers it was the old merchant, his back bent, his voice shaking. The council flees, he whispered. They hide in their halls, afraid of the people. You have broken them, Daniel frowned. Not broken, only shaken. They will return unless the people stand. The old merchant nodded. And they will. You lit the fire, human, and it will not die. When morning came, the marketplace filled again, but this time the noise was not just trade, it was change. People spoke openly, no longer whispering. Widows walked without lowering their eyes. Workers gathered in groups, planning, and speaking of fairness. The city that had been silent for years now carried the sound of awakening. At the docks, Daniel worked with Solara, Arian, and Lyra. Together they rebuilt the broken door, mended the shattered benches, and cleaned the floor stained by the fight. Each swing of the hammer, each lifted crate, felt like an act of defiance. Children ran in and out of the workshop laughing. Their voices filled the air with life. Daniel watched them and allowed himself a small smile. This was why he had chosen to stay. Not for glory, not for thanks, but for this simple sound of life refusing to be crushed. Solara wiped sweat from her brow, her voice steady. You gave us more than work. You gave us back our dignity. Arian nodded, tears in her eyes. We were invisible, but now we are seen. Lyra's lips curved into the smallest of smiles, her soft voice carrying weight. You gave us a place where we belong. Daniel looked at them, his voice low. No, you gave it to yourselves. You stood, you fought, you refused to bow. I only stood beside you. But even as hope grew, shadows still lingered. Brakar had vanished after the fight, and rumors spread that he was gathering allies outside the city. The council was not gone, only waiting. The widows knew peace was fragile, like glass that could break with one strike. That evening, a crowd gathered outside the workshop, not with anger but with respect. Dock workers, merchants, mothers, even guards stood together. One by one they placed gifts at the door. Bread, cloth, tools, small coins. A woman spoke, her voice trembling. You gave us courage. We will not let them take it again. Daniel stood in the doorway, the widows beside him. He looked at the faces of the people, so many who once turned away, now standing proud. His voice carried strong. Then hold on to it. Do not wait for one man to fight your battles. You must fight together. The crowd roared. Together. The widows exchanged glances. Solara lifted her chin. We are not curses. Arian pressed her child close. We are not weak. Lyra raised her hammer again. We are not forgotten. And the people echoed them, their voices shaking the air. We are not forgotten. From that day, the workshop became more than a place of labor. It became a meeting hall, a place where workers gathered, where widows found strength, where children were fed, and where hope grew strong. Brakar never returned, perhaps broken by his defeat, or perhaps waiting in the dark. The council retreated deeper into its halls, its power shattered by the will of the people. Life in Vayara was far from perfect, but something had shifted forever. One night, as the stars burned bright above, Solara spoke quietly by the fire. You could leave, Daniel. You could walk away now that the city stands. Why do you stay? Daniel looked at the flames, his face calm. Because my fight is not finished. Because your children deserve a future. Because no one should ever beg for life and be denied. The widows fell silent. Their hearts ached with gratitude. In their darkest hour, a human had stood beside them, and because of that choice, their world had changed. When dawn broke again, the sons of Vayara rose over streets no longer silent with fear. They rose over widows who walked with heads held high, over children who laughed without shame, over workers who spoke without trembling, and above all they rose over one workshop by the river, where hope had taken root. It began with 3 desperate voices in a marketplace, ignored and rejected by all, and it ended with an entire city learning to speak, to fight, and to rise, and at the heart of it all stood one human who refused to walk away.